Well, hello everyone from around the world. My name is Dr. Kirk Fisnick, and welcome to our live webinar. This is Friday. It's July 14th, 2023. And you know, Katie called me the other day, Katie Larkin, my friend and business partner from down in Australia. She lives down in the Melbourne area. She called me the other day and she said, Kurt, she said, we really should talk about stem cells and we should talk about stem cell support. She knows that I've had a lot of experience with receiving stem cells, and she knows that I've done some research on it. She knows that I worked with Tom Maurer and a couple of things, working with him, talking to him a lot about the products that we have over at Sizzle. So here goes. That's what we're gonna talk about tonight on the call. And so the first thing I want to say is that this is my story. This is what happened to me. I can't guarantee that everything that's gone on with me is going to happen for you. There's a lot of variables, when it comes to life stories. There's so many variables. I've done things different my whole adult life practically. I started working with natural medicine way back when I was about 23, 24 years old, and I'm 61 now. And so, I've been doing this nearly 40 years. And some of you, you might be in your 60s now. And some of you might be older than that, and some of you might be younger. It's never too late to get started. That's the whole thing, is that, I was just with my dad, and my dad is 86 this year, and I've got him taking a couple of things. I've switched around some of the products that he's taken, and it's never too late to make those changes and decide that, hey, I'm going to try and do something to live my life a little healthier. There's a few things that I might do before I go start buying specialized nutrition, like eliminating some of the toxic ingredients out of the products that you're using in your personal care product, toothpaste, shampoo, laundry detergent, dishwashing soap, things like that. I might change that up first before I go, spending a lot of money on nutrition. But hey, you got to start somewhere, and again, it's not too late to do that. So, saying that you might not get the same results that I have, I want to talk about kind of where I've been for the last, I guess it's going on 16 years now. August of 2007, I was involved in a horrible motorcycle accident. I was just, a couple miles away from my house here, driving home actually, and I was going 25 miles an hour on my Harley, and some guy ran a stop sign, and they figured he was going 60, 65 miles an hour when he T-boned me. And when he hit, I had a big road bike, and he knocked the bike about 50 feet, and I was on the bike when I found myself awake on the highway. There I was. My right leg was busted. I could see the leg, the bone sticking through my blue jeans. I could see the bone sticking through my blue jeans. I could see the bone sticking through my skin, blood gushing out. And here my leg was, my foot was up by my head, and it was pointing the wrong direction. So not only was it broken, it was twisted like a towel, and like you're wringing out a towel. And it's pretty gruesome to think about that. But that's what I woke up to when I got hit. And I don't know how long I'd been laying there. I don't think it was more than a couple minutes, because the lady comes running out of the gas station just a block away. I could see her running out carrying a little fishing tackle box with a safety kit, a first aid kit in it. And I was laughing as she was coming up, and I said, you better get a few more Band-Aids than that. And because my skull was cracked, my right leg was smashed into, I guess the doctors describe it, my right leg was smashed into a million pieces. It was just shattered. And my left arm was broken, and who knows what else had happened to me. But that's the things that I remember. From there, they took me by ambulance to the local hospital, And at the hospital, they said, look, there's nobody in Fargo that's qualified to work on you. And they threw me on a jet and they airlifted me all the way to Minneapolis. And I remember the jet landing, and I remember getting on the ambulance from the airport to the hospital. And then when I got there, they pretty much, were ready for me. And they said, count backwards from 100. And 2 days later, I woke up. And at that time, I just jotted some notes here. So I'm reading off a piece of paper here to, just kind of keep me on track, keep me so I can keep this call down to, a compact thing. Anyhow, when I woke up in the hospital, there was 5 doctors in the room, and I didn't know that it had been 2 days. I didn't know that. I thought they airlifted me in on Sunday night. I thought it was Monday morning. I didn't know. Nobody told me. In fact, nobody told me for 5 years that I had been unconscious for 2 days. I went 5 years thinking, wow, it just feels like I'm missing time, like there's time missing in my life. And I don't know if you've ever had that feeling, but I just felt like I was missing time. And nobody ever told me that I'd been unconscious, that I'd been in an induced coma for 2 days. But I spent over 2 months in the hospital. They did multiple surgeries. I had over $300,000 in medical bills by the time I got done. They wanted to amputate my leg, and I refused to do that. I won't get into that whole thing, but 2 months in the hospital, 6 months after I got home, I was in bed rest. And then I spent 2 years kind of up and down, I describe it, but I was in and out of a wheelchair. I was using a cane, I was using crutches, I was using a walker. Yeah, it was pretty bad. There were some times there where I was going, man, maybe I should have opted for the amputation like the doctors had suggested. They said that I'd never walk again if I didn't have that amputation. And I was nearly convinced of it a couple times. I was nearly convinced of it a couple times that maybe I didn't make the right decision. But truth of the story is, they were so dead set on the fact that they were right, I was wrong, I made the wrong choice, and they weren't going to really help me out with my rehab, and I had kind of had my own ideas on things. One of the first things, they sent me home with a bunch of narcotics, bags of narcotics, and they said, you're going to be on these the rest of your life. I had a bunch of counseling on how not to get addicted, but yet I had a prescription that, I could probably still be on it today. But as soon as I got home, I started weaning myself off, and I got off of those things within 2 or 3 months. I'm not sure exactly, but it was 2 or 3 months. And I went to work putting together my own rehab program, as a chiropractor. I kind of knew a few things about that stuff. And like I said, it took me 2 years before I really started to notice that the great improvements that I had. But once I saw it, it was just boom, boom, boom. It started happening really quickly. A lot of natural painkillers, a lot of nutrition, a lot of natural therapy, walking. I decided I was going to walk. It hurt, boy. I tell you what, it hurt. I live out here, kind of. It's not in the country, but it's semi in the country, and I'd go for walks down the apple orchard. And and I'd walk there, and I'd have to lay on the ground and just give myself a rest. And I remember, to get there and back, there was an awful lot of resting. And my dog at the time, Chewy, he got used to stopping and waiting for me. And then when he got older, then I got used to stopping and waiting for him because he had done it for me. But it was a process of I knew that if I wanted to heal up, I would just have to push myself through it. And I would have to endure some pain. And boy, I mean, some of my friends can tell you the intense pain that they saw me go through. I went to Florida one time with my buddy Ed, and we went down there for a little winter vacation, get the heck out of this cold weather that we have up here. And in the airport on the way back, boy, I barely made it across the airport back to the airplane. It was that bad. The pain was so bad. I was just sweating. I mean, I felt like I wasn't going to make it. But here I am going on 16 years since the accident. And I can say that, I'm doing pretty good considering where I've been, and you learn how to work around the things that are wrong with you. You don't let them, be a disability, right? It's something that's wrong with you, but you don't let it disable you. I hope that you know what I mean. If you know that you can only go so far, that's as far as you go. And if you know that you can do this or that, hey, that's what you do. And so that's kind of where I'm at. But you take a look at what I've done with myself, and you take a look at the natural aging process. And this is really what I want to talk to you about tonight, is I didn't want to just talk about me, about what's happened to me, because yeah, it's a horrific story, and I've recovered real well. But I want to talk about natural anti-aging. And in order to talk about anti-aging, I got to talk about aging. What is aging? And my friend Tom Maurer, he used to say, aging is when your degeneration is happening faster than your regeneration. And what that means is that your body is falling apart faster than your own body, your own natural healing. It's the degeneration, the wearing out, is happening faster than your body can rebuild it. That's what aging is. So when you go to your doctor, to your physician, and they prescribe something, is it going to help your body regenerate faster? Probably not, because they're giving you something that's going to cover up the pain. They're giving you something that's going to mask the symptoms. They're going to give you something that's going to change, like say cholesterol or high blood pressure, things like that. But are they really working with the regeneration? Are they really speeding up the regeneration, or are they slowing down the degeneration? And in most cases, the answer to that is no, because most drugs that are on the market, all they do is they mask things, and they don't really fix things. And so in order for your body to have a better regenerative process, part of it is up here. You've got to have the mindset. You've got to have the attitude that you're going to say, and I like how one of my mentors, Anthony Robbins, I like how he says it. He says that, you have to change the should do's to the have to's. The should do's to the have to's. And what I mean by that is that, I have to get better. It's not I should get better. No, I have to get better. I have to. And that's the attitude that you have to have, is that I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get better. And I pushed myself through a lot of stuff that, boy, I tell you what, I've had people tell me they wouldn't do it. But here I am at 61 last week. I was with my youngest boy and my oldest boy, and we went 24 miles down the Columbia River, 12 miles a day. We camped on an island and carried all our gear on the boats with us, and our camping gear and our food and water, whatever we needed to do, to make that happen. And 12 miles a day, and it was paddling. We were paddling, we weren't drifting. There really wasn't a current, and we were fighting the wind the whole time. And at 61, I tell people, I mean, hey, I think that I did pretty good. I kept up with my boys. They didn't have to slow down and wait for me, anything like that. I did it. I accomplished it. But I had to. There wasn't like I could say, hey, I'm boys, I'm gonna stop here. You go on. I'll meet up with you later. No, it was I had to, and that's the things that you have to realize in life, is that I had to walk again. I didn't give myself any choice. I didn't say, well, if it doesn't work, I'll go get my leg cut off. I'll get that prosthetic. No, I decided that I'm going to do it, and I did it. And maybe I have access to a few more things than some of you do, as far as like, with my education and my access to certain experts and physicians and things like that. But a lot of it starts right up here. You have to have that mindset. You have to have the attitude that you're going to do it. And then you kind of develop a plan of action of how you're going to do it. And exercise is a big part of it. Moving. You got to keep moving. You got to keep moving all the time. You got to keep moving all the time. And I knew that. So, I knew that I had to keep my body going, and don't let that stiffness, don't let that rigor mortis set into the joints. And I could feel it coming on that right leg, right down at the ankle joint, because that's where most of my injury occurred. My foot was shattered, and not so much the foot, the ankle was shattered into a million pieces. I remember one of the orthopedic surgeons that saw me way back 16 years ago. He said, Kurt, he said, just imagine taking a wine glass and just throwing it on the floor, and it just shatters into a million pieces. And then now you got to take those little pieces of glass and you got to glue them back together and make it look like a wine glass. Well, that's what they did with my foot, with my ankle, and they put it all back together. And boy, I tell you what, for a while it felt like stepping on sharp glass. I mean, when I walk down the street, I mean, even today, I find that there's little specks of bone that kind of work their way through, little broken pieces that work their way out, and they get pretty sharp and things like that. But I mean, I've pushed myself through, and I've done the exercise, and I continue, and I know I got to do more. I can't stop now. I want to live another 50 years. I want to be 110 years old when I pass away. And you don't do that by sitting back and saying, well, this is what happened to me. No, I don't talk about it very much. I mean, most people that know me, most people don't know the whole story, because of the fact that I don't talk about it all that much. I just, I hope most people don't even realize that I ever had an accident. They'll ask, oh, why are you limping today? And I kind of laugh, and I say, well, why am I limping today? It's the same reason I limp every day. I limp every day. It's not just today. But nutrition, attitude, mindset, and exercise. And nutrition is really, really key important. See, what happened to me kind of, in a way, speeded up the aging process. Again, my degeneration, my injury, was happening faster than my body could regenerate. So the medical doctors, they saved my life. They put me back together like Humpty Dumpty, and kind of squished things back together, and they rebuilt me. But then my body had to take over, and I had to get the regenerative process to be faster than degeneration. Otherwise, I'd be full of arthritis right now. Can you imagine? Being thrown at 65 miles an hour and landing on my head, cracking my skull, breaking my arms, shattering my leg. Who knows what else broke? I mean, that's the things that they found, but they missed things because they were focused on the major stuff. Anyhow, so aging happens when the regenerative process can't keep up. And so what triggers the regenerative process is something in your body called stem cells. Stem cells are cells that if you imagine, they're like little they're like little, I'm trying to come up with an analogy that will make sense to you. Think of them like little egg cells. They're sitting there and they're waiting to turn into whatever they need to turn into. So you might have a batch of a nest of, you know, if we're talking about eggs, let's say it's a nest full of eggs, and these eggs are all just sitting there and they're waiting to turn into something. In my case, they had to turn into skull bone, you know, so they had to turn into the bones of my skull. So these stem cells come out of the nest and they're directed by whatever means your body has. Now, I won't get into all that, but they're directed by whatever means your body has. And all of a sudden they go into the bones of my skull and the soft tissue of my skull, probably to my brain, because I probably had a traumatic brain injury. How can you land on your head at 65 miles an hour and not have a traumatic brain injury? But they go into my brain and my skull, and they turn into brain cells and bone cells and soft tissue, and even the hair that got scuffed off my head, they turn into hair cells and things like that. Where my arm was broken, they turn into arm bone cells, muscle cells, nerve cells. They go into my leg, and where, you know, where they pushed all the little broken pieces together, they turn into leg bone cells and muscles and nerves and all of that. So that being said, the aging process happens when you don't have enough stem cells to keep up. Okay, does that make sense? So when you're born, you have hundreds of thousands of millions of stem cells in your body, because, you know, when you're young, think about it. When you're 15 years old, you fall down, you hurt yourself. 2 days later, you don't even remember that it happened. There's nothing, there's no scar, there's nothing. 20 years old, same thing. 25, slowing down. You start to notice that you don't heal up as fast. I remember when I was 30, I went out on the deck out back here, and it was early morning, and I don't remember why I went on the deck, but there was a frost that night. A thin layer of ice formed on the deck. Woo! My legs went out from underneath me, and I landed on my butt so hard, and I laid outside there. It wasn't that cold, but I just laid there, and I'm like, holy crap, did that hurt? I mean, that was a blow. And I remember, you know, it took a while. It took a while for me to heal up from that. And later on, you know, I mean, when you got to be 40, something happens, takes a little longer. Get to be 50, something happens, it takes a little bit longer. And as you age, it takes a little bit longer. Why is that? Fewer stem cells. You're using them all up. You used them up when you were 15, 16, 18, 20 years old. And your body just using for various things. I mean, even inflammation, if you have some inflammation, it'll use it up on that. And so that's just part of aging. And some people are lucky, they're born with more stem cells than other people are. And so we look at that. But there's also the thing about that your cells have a built-in timeline, like a lifeline. You're built in with what we call telomere units, these telomeres, and think of it kind of like having a long fuse or a string. And what happens is every minute, every day that you're alive, you clip off a little bit, right? And you shorten that fuse, you shorten that whole thing up. And what ends up happening is, over a period of time, that fuse gets so short, there's no stopping it. There's no stopping it. And what happens is if it gets down to the very end, the cell explodes. It implodes on itself. So your immune system is designed to look for those cells. And what it does, it takes them out of the system. Takes them out. Pulls them out of the system, and then a stem cell goes in there and it takes its place. And so let's say that it's a cell in my leg. Now the stem cell comes in and takes the place of that old cell. Your immune system takes and it tears that down, reuses what it can, right? Recycles, right? Our body is a great recycler. Recycles all these different things, because it's a lot easier to recycle bits and pieces than it is to go rebuild the whole thing. So it's constantly taking, tearing down, rebuilding, tearing down, rebuilding, and things like that. And so what if you could take and you could extend those telomeres? What if you could make them longer, right? And this was the science that came out in 2009. My accident happened in 2007. 2 years later, the science, Nobel Prize science, these doctors figured out how you could rebuild that. You could make that longer, right? Make that telomere longer. And by doing so, you can take your cells and you can make your cells so that they don't go into this aging process as quickly. Isn't that key? And so that was one of the first things that I really started to learn about. And I got introduced to Sizzle, to my company that I'm with right now, a nutrition company that I work with, about that same time, just about the time that science was really making headway in the medical field. So I learned about it, because I was always interested. If you remember when they cloned that sheep, Dolly the sheep, and I always talk about that, but I won't bring up the whole thing. But I was always interested, the whole cloning thing. But telomeres was very interesting to me because, using nutrition, we could take and we could lengthen those things out. We could lengthen that telomere out. And so I started studying that. And I started taking a product that did just that. and I could make my cells younger based on the telomeres. Well, think about that. So here I am. I used up a lot of stem cells. I mean, I had to use up a gob of stem cells when I got my motorcycle wreck. I mean, you got to imagine that my body was just going through hell, and it's grabbing stem cells from everywhere and saying, "Oh, geez, you don't have any problems with your elbow. Let's go down and put this in the foot." So I'd take the stem cells from my elbow and move it down to my foot, and things like that. I mean, just imagine that's what your body's going through. It's just transferring all these stem cells everywhere, and really, I don't know. I'm not going to say that I'm perfect, but I eat pretty clean, pretty clean. I don't eat a lot of processed foods. I don't overindulge in alcohol, anything like that, but I don't take any medicine. And I think sometimes medicine tends to suppress your body from doing what it's supposed to do. Like if you take a fever, for example, the fever's happening because your body is fighting off something. Well, if you suppress the fever, then you're suppressing your body's natural response, right? And I'm not telling you what to do. I mean, I'm not giving medical advice here or anything like that. I'm just saying kind of my opinion, my thoughts, and things like that. So I'm not giving you any kind of medical advice. If you've got a health problem, go see your healthcare provider. Don't come and see me. I'm a doctor. It says it right on the screen, but I'm not your doctor. Right? You have to see your doctor. But if you don't agree with what your doctor has to say, find another doctor. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, nobody says that hey, you're seeing Dr. Smith and you have to see Dr. Smith for the rest of your life. If you don't agree with him, if your health decisions don't line up, find another doctor. I mean, come on. It's your health. And so you want to take and you want to get these telomeres lengthened out, okay? But along the line, your immune system also starts to wear out. You put too much work on your immune system, and all of a sudden your immune system starts to say, hey, we can't keep up anymore. So your immune system, it goes into what they call senescence, right? And they used to think that senescence was when your body put the cells to sleep. It kind of, said, hey, go over there and take a rest. Well, what they found in the last few years, I'm not going to, really say how long, but in the last decade anyhow, that when cells go into this senescence, they really aren't going to sleep. What they are is they're going into kind of a zombie state. My friend Andrea, she likes to say the word zombie all the time. Zombie cells, she likes to say it. But they go into this zombie state. And think of it like these zombie cells. What they want to do is they want to party. They want to get down, right? And they want you to join in on the party. So they're they're causing trouble. They're raising havoc in your body, and they're damaging other cells, and they're injecting their party mode into those other cells. And what happens is that pretty soon you start having cells that are wearing out, but at the same time, they're damaging the cells that are next to them. And then those cells are going out and doing the same thing. And pretty soon you have trouble. That's a medical term, trouble. And you can look it up. Go on Google Scholar and look it up, trouble. But anyhow, it causes trouble for your other cells, and it starts to cause them to also go into senescence. And your immune system is supposed to go, no, get that out of here. And but the immune cells go into senescence as well. So you've got to figure out how to take and lengthen out those telomeres so that the cells can live longer and happier. But you've also got to fix these senescent stem cells. You got to fix these senescent immune cells. And so you've got to repair them, and you've got to take them out of this zombie state and put them back into the field, get them back out there, get them out in the field playing football, soccer, whatever, and repaired. And so there's some things that we can do with that as well. And then we can take and we can give the body more energy because really bottom line is everything in your body runs on hydrogen. Everything is broken down in the simplest terms. It's broken into hydrogen units, and that's what your body uses for energy. And the stem cells need that. And so it's key to do that. And so we talk a lot about inflammation. You hear me talking a lot about inflammation. If you go back on my YouTube channel and you listen to that, you'll hear me talking a lot about inflammation, chronic inflammation, and it doesn't have to be a lot of inflammation. Like, you may not see a puffiness in your wrist or anything like that, but there might be some microscopic inflammation. And what happens is then your body is noticing that, your body goes after that, and it starts to attack it, and it slows it down. It uses up stem cells for that as well. And so all the time you've got this trouble. Remember, that's a medical term, trouble. And now you've got inflammation, you've got lack of stem cells, you've got cells going into senescence, you got cells that are wearing out. All of these things are really causing trouble, right? And so I went out and I had 15 stem cell injections. I worked with a couple stem cell clinics. I was actually working as doing patient education. I went out and did some recruitment for a couple of stem cell clinics, educated people on why they needed it, and brought them into the clinic. But stem cells, you can get stem cells from other sources, right? They don't have to be out of your own body. You can take stem cells from umbilical cord, because again, you're not taking it from abortion, dead babies, and all that controversial stuff like that. But what you're doing is you can get them from umbilical cords from healthy births. When a baby is born, the umbilical cord and the placenta and all that stuff kind of gets thrown away and all that. But inside of all that, there's stem cells, and you can extract those stem cells. Anyhow, that's what I had. I had allografts. I had a number of them that were put into my leg and my back and my wrist, and I was amazed. And that was 6 years ago now. And 2 weeks after I had it done, I felt so good. I actually went out and I did a 10K. I did a 10K. I didn't run. I still don't run. One of my legs wants to run, the other one can't, because of the accident. It just, so imagine having one leg that's going 50 miles an hour and the other leg's going 25 miles an hour, and you fall down a lot. So I don't do that. But anyhow, so that's trouble too. Anyhow, so I decided that I wanted to make this stem cell treatment, because stem cell treatments, it's not cheap. It costs a lot of money. And so I want to make it so it works the best that it possibly can. So before I had my stem cell injection, in fact, when I work with people and I say, hey, you need to go get a stem cell injection, it'd probably make a great difference in your life, I try and educate them on things that they can do to make it work better. And really bottom line, how I wanted to end this call is talking about the things that you can do to actually make it work better. And so one of the things that I talk about is, okay, so if you're stem cells, if you're getting stem cells and you've got a lot of inflammation, guess what? Those stem cells are gonna attack the inflammation first, and they're gonna try and lower that inflammation. So you're gonna use up, thousands of dollars worth of treatment just to get rid of inflammation. So why not take and get rid of the inflammation first? And I'm not talking doing steroids and things like that, medicines and drugs, because actually, again, because it suppresses your natural body symptoms. When you get the stem cell injection, now it's not going to work as well. That's actually the case. If you go on steroids before you have a stem cell injection, you just negated what you just paid for. So why do it at all? But so what can you use? I like to use a extract from brown seaweed. It's called fucoidan. It's got a natural anti-inflammatory fighting ability that just out of this world, and it boosts the immune system, right? And again, think of all the things that I've just said, is that your immune system is getting rid of the senescent cell. So why not take and boost that immune system? Why don't you help that immunity? And why don't you take and get rid of the inflammation? Bingo, right? So that's why I use a natural product called fucoidan. And get a hold of me or get in touch with the person that brought you this video and ask them. Just say, hey, how do I get some of this fucoidan stuff and get on it? And I recommend, before somebody does any kind of stem cell injection, you should probably be on the fucoidan product a month before they do the stem cell injection. That's just my recommendation. There's no science on it. There's no research that I can pinpoint. But I've been doing this now for over 30 years, and there's certain things that you start to see. You start to see it a lot, right? And you start to say, okay, this makes sense. And so you make recommendations based on that. Again, I'm not your doctor. You have to talk to your doctor about this, but I find that it really works well. And then telomeres, right? There's a lot of things you can do. You can do vitamin C, and it's going to help with your stem cells. You can do fish oil. It's going to help out with your stem cells. You can do vitamin E. It's going to help with your stem cells. But even exercise helps with your stem cells. But the thing about it is that if you want to do something that's really going to just boost that telomere, that telomerase activity a lot, I use an extract from something. It's a plant. It's called astragalus. And you don't want to just have astragalus, because a lot of companies, they start using astragalus root, for example, or the whole astragalus plant. And when they did the studies on astragalus, they took the plant and they dry it. I mean, just think about this. They dry the plant. You take the dry plant, you powder it up, and you take that. Well, they found that in this astragalus, there's certain active ingredients. There's active ingredients in the astragalus. Cycloastragenol is one of them. And they found that if you take a room the size of the room that I'm in right now, you take a room the size of an elephant. In that room, if that room was filled up with astragalus, you'd get about as much cycloastragenol that would fill a bread sack. A room this size of an elephant, and just the active would fill the size of a bread sack. So you can see that if you get a supplement that has the cycloastragenol, the active ingredient, the one that actually benefits the telomeres, you don't need very much. Just a minute amount, right? Versus if you're getting it from a company that uses the whole plant, you're going to have to take a gob of it, right? You're going to have to, take giant sandwiches made out of this stuff, right? Versus just a little bit, right? And so that's what I do. I was excited when I started talking to Tom Maurer about it, because he had a company that they used just the right amount. And they use other active ingredients that helped with this telomerase. And it's all based on, and we don't have any science on our product, for example. I can't say there's science on our product, but there's a Nobel Prize science on the ingredient. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these active ingredients, and we've got these active ingredients in our product. So that's one of the first things you want to do, because you just want to slow that aging process down, right? Because now your body, again, think about it, you're trying to make it so that regeneration can be faster than the degeneration. The rebuilding can be faster than the tearing down. Okay, so that's one product. And by the way, our product is called Telomere Support Extreme because it supports the telomeres, the telomerase, and so TSX is the name of the product. But you also want to take and again, like I talked about, you want to lower the inflammation, lower that inflammation down. You want to boost the immune system, and that's where fucoidan comes in. So again, ask the person that gave you this video to tell you a little bit more about how to get some of this fucoidan and dosages and things like that, because it's a natural product. Not everybody needs the same amount. Some people take more. Heck, I give it to my dog. I've been giving it to my dogs for the last 8 years. And then what you want to do is you want to boost the immune system. Anything that you can do to help with that immunity, get that immunity. Right. And you want to do things that are going to help with your keeping your body stress free and things like that. What can you do? Exercise is a great thing for stress, and making sure that you sleep properly. And so we've got different things that can help with that. Again, get back to the person that got you this video. They can help you out with that. Rebuild the collagen. Those are really, really important. But the other thing is that you can imagine that every day your body's getting bombarded with radiation, you're getting bombarded with stress, you're getting bombarded with this and that. And so what it does is it damages your DNA. It damages the mitochondrial DNA is the one that's the DNA that gets damaged the most. And so you need something that's going to repair that DNA. And they found that resveratrol works with the sirtuin genes, and the sirtuin genes are the genes that God gave us. They're designed to repair this damaged DNA. I mean, you could just imagine, you know as much as you know about DNA, and you can just imagine that if it's damaged, it's not good. Again, we hear that word trouble, right? And so you want to repair that DNA. So we have a product that's called Eternity, and it's a specially formulated form of resveratrol. And I won't get into all that. You can go back on my video channel and you can read about and listen to us talk about resveratrol and Eternity and why it's so important. But you're repairing that damaged DNA. Again, the whole idea is that what you're trying to do is you're trying to make the cells so that they regenerate faster than they degenerate. Okay, key. And so these things are all working together. Nothing's working by itself. It's all working together. It all works synergistically. And then you want to have more energy. You want to make sure that you have more of that hydrogen. Remember earlier I was talking about hydrogen. You want to have more of this hydrogen because that's the fuel. If you don't have fuel, nothing can take place. If I would go jump in my truck and it's way down on E over here, guess what? I'm not going very far, right? And that's the same thing with your body. You're just not going to get very far if your body's on E. And so we have a product that's called the Age Pill, and what it does is it supercharges, it works with your body to make it so that you have enough hydrogen so your body can do what it's supposed to do. Again, we can't make any claims about natural products because natural products don't cure, they don't heal anything. What they do is they support your body's natural ability to do these things. And so we don't talk about diseases because we don't work with diseases. What we're doing is we're boosting your body's natural system. And so that's where this stuff comes into play. So as you do that, what they found is that it helps to increase the number of stem cells. Remember I said as you get older, you start to have a decrease of stem cells, a big decrease, right? And that's trouble. And so you want to take and you want to increase the number of stem cells that are in your body. You want to increase the number of stem cells that are active, right? So you're going to pull them out of senescence. And here's where the last part of the picture comes into place, is that they found that extracts from strawberries, right? They found an extract from a strawberry called ficitin that what it does is it helps to get rid of these senescent cells, these cells that have gone into this zombie state, right? And I've had people tell me, "Oh, I love strawberries. I eat them every day." Well, the problem with it is that most of the strawberries that you buy today are loaded up with pesticides and things like that. So they probably aren't all that healthy for you in the first place. Go ahead and eat them because, you know, they taste great, right? But have you ever had a strawberry that was raised in somebody's organic garden? Like if you go to your sister's garden and you raid her garden and you take all of her strawberries. I would never do that, but you might. And they taste better than the ones you buy at the store, and they're red versus being white like the ones you buy in the store. You know, the insides are red versus being white. And but anyhow, that's a different story. But so strawberries have something called ficitin, and they found that ficitin helps get rid of senescence. They found that ficitin works on other things too. Over in the UK, they've been doing some studies on that, and I've talked about it on other calls. But you know, and brain activity, things like that, immune system. But it gets rid of these senescent cells, and now your immune system can keep up. Boom. You see what's happening now? All of a sudden, you're giving your body the ability for it to rebuild faster than you tear down. Doesn't that make sense? Doesn't that make sense? So that product, we call it Stemolytics, and talk to the person that got you this video and just say, hey, I'd like to find out more about that, or text me. I mean, what the heck? And I'll tell you more about it. But you know, so these things all work together, and what they do is they help your body to improve so that now you can fight, and you know, hopefully we'll all live to be 110 years old. And we'll be healthy. We'll be kayaking 12 miles a day, riding a bicycle till we're 98, whatever, right? Just imagine that you're able to do that. And at the same time, you've got all that mental acuity. You know, I was talking to my dad today, and I said, you know, I remember before the age pill came out, again, this is my story. You might not notice it, but I remember I'd have pockets full of Post-it notes by the end of the day. I'd have to write myself little notes. Oh, Kurt, remember to do this tomorrow. I'd write myself notes like that all the time. You know, hey, do this tomorrow, do this next week. And you know, and I was 55, and I noticed a lot of people that were that age, they did the same thing. I was wearing cheaters. I was wearing the little reading glasses, so that I could see, because otherwise I'm squinting to read anything. And I don't do that anymore. I don't have a pocket with a single Post-it note in my pocket. I don't write notes to myself. Amazing. And I don't wear reading glasses. I don't even know where they are. Holy cow. 61 years old. And so that's my story. I'm sticking to it. That's what's happened to me. I hope that you have the same kind of results. Get back to the person that brought you here. I know I talked a little bit over time, practically an hour. I apologize for that. But, I didn't want to divide it up into 2 parts, because I hate it when it's a mini series like that. Have a great day. Enjoy. Bye-bye.